Welcome back to the Wild Side, right here on Rhode Island's independent home of the Renegade Radio, 990 WBOB.com. We are within 2 months of the election. The primaries are over. Ladies and gentlemen of Rhode Island, it is time to finally decide who your candidate will be, who that person will be that you elect to lead this state of Rhode Island. And a lot of people come to that decision by watching the debates, by getting to know the candidates. But some of these debates are inviting all of the candidates. Joining me right now is one of those candidates who wasn't invited to the debate with WPRI 12 from the Moderate Party, their chairman and gubernatorial candidate, Bill Gilbert. Bill, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, once again, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no problem. So for those who don't know what's going on, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about the background to this story, about Nexstar Media's policies, about how you weren't invited?
Well, you know, we found out at the last hour, I'd say on Friday, that we weren't being invited to the first televised debate based on, I guess, the published criteria they have on their website. Now, the issue that we have is when we look at that criteria, there's basically 3 paragraphs. Our interpretation of those paragraphs is we meet the criteria to participate in those debates, and there's a disagreement. I don't believe it's a credible disagreement on the part of the owners of Channel 12,
Nexstar Media,
with Nexstar Media, and so that's really where it's at. We've there's a paragraph. Paragraph number 3 lists 7 criteria to be an actively campaigning be considered an actively campaigning candidate. And we meet all 7 of those criteria. We have a website, we have a campaign headquarters, we have a volunteer staff, we have a campaign account, we have published media, we have materials, we have funds, we've raised funds. All our funds have come from within the state of Rhode Island. So, what it really boils down to is they say there's also a test in their criteria that we don't believe is published correctly, but they believe there's a test that you have to be polling at 10%, in a recognized poll. So they say that we're not currently polling at the 10%, and so therefore we're not invited. And we've also raised that challenge that Joe Trillo in their last poll themselves on Friday, Joe Trillo is only polling at 7%. So once again, we don't understand why our party is not invited either, because Joe Trillo at this time isn't making the same criteria they're holding to the Moderate Party.
Also worth mentioning,
it's disappointing.
Yeah, also worth mentioning, of course, Joe Trillo is an independent. On the line with us right now is Bill Gilbert of the Moderate Party. So, Bill, in the past, though, you guys did have a candidate that did compete in the Channel 12 debate. I believe they were under a different parent company than Nexstar Media then, but Bob Healy was invited to those debates.
Absolutely, and I guess, the real beef that I have, Bob Healy was able to participate in the debates, and God rest his soul, but I think it really goes to the broader issue of, do our news organizations actually filter the news before they disseminate it to their audience, or are they actually presenting a fair and balanced picture? In my belief growing up in America, I've always thought that my news was fair and balanced, and it presented me with alternatives, and it allowed me to make the decision. Today, they're picking a winner before the game is even over. What they're basically saying is that they consider the Moderate Party such a long shot, they don't want to waste the real estate of an actual prime time to somebody that they consider has no shot of winning. But without that prime time juxtaposition against the other candidates, it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So you're forced in America to buy the first 10 or 15%, and I thought we wanted money out of politics.
So I do know both of these gentlemen personally, so I'm not meaning to give either of them any disrespect in any way, but I do know that you've had at least some interaction with Tim White and Ted Nesi from Channel 12, and what has that been like? What have they had to say on it, even though it's not their executive decision?
Yeah, I don't hold any ill will for anybody. I also get that, Tim White, Ted Nesi are also, part of a media that, it's entertainment-based media where they, they're feeding their family and, on ratings, and they have the same struggle that the Providence Journal has. I get the commercial aspect of, the news media. I don't believe that there's any ill intention at all, but I do think that when you're in a commercial endeavor with an FCC license, that there's some higher level of standard that a journalist has. If you want to hold yourself out to be a journalist, or let's say the parent company wants to pretend or hold themselves out as a fair and balanced news organization, not an editorial or, like a regular talk show, I think that they're beholden to present all the sides. And, I do think I'm somewhat different than your average, let's say, fringe candidate or, a one-off. We are one of the only 2 or 3 legitimate ballot-certified third parties in the country. Not just, the several states. Even the Libertarian Party isn't on the ballot this state. But the Moderate Party is. I'm a candidate that Ted White and Mr. Nisi and Mr. White have interviewed before, and I think I was quite credible. That interview is on my website. I do have over $100,000 of, in a campaign war chest that didn't come lightly. This isn't a one-off campaign. This isn't a campaign where I want to talk about Bigfoot and UFOs. I got some real ideas, and the people are getting shortchanged, not being able to talk about my ideas of universal health care, not being able to talk about my ideas of having the world's largest vocational center placed in Woonsocket, reducing our sales tax to 5%. There's a lot of issues that the people are going to be stripped of hearing because of this decision. Now, again, I understand, and I don't hold any ill will to them. I look forward to presenting and pressing my ideas. Unfortunately, it's a big opportunity for a candidate to be able to have the stage in juxtaposition and compare and contrast next to the people they say are front runners. Those front runners currently have not published anything near the platform that I've published. Our platform is over 7 pages long. And, it's just absurd to say that there's not a credible, viable candidate sitting here.
On the line with us right now is Bill Gilbert from the Moderate Party. Follow them on Twitter. Bill runs a handle at Moderate Party RI. So, Bill, you actually do have some debate experience, though, because as I know, you ran quite a few debates, forums, whatever you want to call them, earlier this election cycle. You were a guy who went out there. You wanted to debate. What does it say, though, that you are a guy who's been willing to debate this whole time? And the 3 candidates who are there, Gina Raimondo, Alan Fung, Joe Trillo, they didn't show up to your forums or debates. And Joe Trillo, of course, being independent, wasn't invited to the primary debates. But between Gina Raimondo and Alan Fung, they had a collective 1 appearance.
Well, I think it goes back to they don't need to. Right now, the way politics is structured in the United States, you have 2 choices. And I think for the last 30 years, we've spent our last 30 years picking the lesser of 2 evils because you only have a this or that choice. So when somebody presents a new flavor, and, it's a new, credible, viable flavor, the last thing that the front runners and the incumbents want to do is get compared and contrast to that. So I understand their political strategy for not wanting to appear next to me. But it is kind of ironic that just prior, during the primaries, they wouldn't debate anybody. And I was holding, we held a series of 4 debates, and we showed up, and we pressed the issues. Bill Rapley came out and moderated for us. There's what's to hide. This is a job interview. That's how I take this. I look forward to sharing my ideas and listening to the ideas of the constituents. It is just it's kind of ironic that just 3 weeks ago nobody could get Gina and Fung to a debate, and now the people that were out there are being excluded. So again, it doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth for where politics is heading in the future. And I think it's really beholden to Tim White and the Ted Nisis to drive the wedge in the other direction, not support and prop up the status quo of incumbents at all costs and only a this or that choice. Again, I want to talk about issues. I don't want to waste real estate and time and valuable airtime like we're doing tonight on the minutia of who should be in a debate. It's just so anti-American to me.
Yeah, absolutely it is, and that's something that I have said here on this show, that it kind of is un-American getting people to the debates. So, Bill, with that statement, though, earlier in this segment, you did say that you did meet the requirements to be invited down. You just weren't invited down there. To that, we can say probably pretty safely didn't meet the requirements. Luis Daniel Munoz and Ann Armstrong of the Compassion Party. Would you invite them down there if you were WPRI? Should it be everyone? Is it just that you were overlooked despite meeting those right requirements? Or should it be anybody who's on the ballot here in the state of Rhode Island should be participating? Should be invited to participate, rather?
Absolutely. Let's talk about that. Because, when we held our forums, when the Moderate Party held our forums and we got together with the other candidates, we did not invite all the candidates. And we did that on purpose because we're a private entity. We're not a news organization. We don't purport to be. We're a political party that's trying to affect change and a political change in the way that we wanted to drive it. So we did not include, certain candidates. And we didn't do that because we didn't want to be drug off topic and sit some of these fringe debates like talking about Bigfoot and UFOs and smoking pot under oak trees. We weren't interested in doing that. We wanted to be legitimate, credible, and look at issues moving into the future. So with that being said, but this is different. This is somebody holding themselves out to be a news organization who purports and who the public believes is feeding them the correct dose of information. It's kind of goes kind of like Donald Trump talks about, like that fake news. This borderlines on that. When a news organization that holds an FCC license that not everybody has, those are protected and they're handed out, and there's a responsibility that goes along with the FCC airwaves. I just can't turn on my transmitter. I can be on the internet, but I can't turn on my transmitter and just broadcast television waves. They won't allow it. They'll come arrest me. So they should have some type of element of equal time. And there was a premise back in the day, and that slowly got eroded in America, where we had equal time and equal access. So when it comes to an FCC debate and a news organization debate, absolutely. Any candidate that makes the criteria of that state's requirement, I believe, should. Let's look at what happened with Ralph Nader. Let's look at Ross Perot's. There's a lot of candidates, the Gary Johnsons of the world, the libertarian candidates before that, the Paul Rands, that wouldn't have been able to get on the ballot or into these debates. What is wrong with more ideas? I don't agree that we only need two because I don't have the bandwidth. I think not having the bandwidth to listen to four people is the real problem, not having four people. That's not the problem.
Bill Gilbert is the candidate for the governor's race of the Moderate Party of Rhode Island. Be sure to follow them on Twitter at Moderate Party RI. Bill, we've only got time for one more question, and as you said, it's a shame that we're talking about debates versus about the issues. Give us a 1-minute sales pitch and let everyone know where they can find out more information about you.
All right. Well, we do have a website up. It's Gilbert, the number 4, Governor. Gilbert, number 4, Governor, 2018. And my platform is on there. Some of the access to justice is a big issue that I'm having. I like to see the doubling of the judicial system so we have more access to the courts. Currently, the family court can take 2 or 3 years to resolve custody issues. That's way too long for a kid not to know where he's going to live. I want to reduce the sales tax from the current rate down to 5%. I want to build a 100,000 square foot vocational facility in the city of Woonsocket to give them a draw and to, at the same time, bring in new industries. We don't have enough children going into the trades to support the industry that we're going to need in 10 years. The average plumber is 59 years old right now. They're going to retire. We're going to be left with a 30% workforce that we have right now. We got to do something different. So we got a lot of neat things that I want to talk about. School safety is another one. How do we remove those guns from the school system at the same time, protect our children from illegal search and seizures? Nobody's talking about the civil rights of our children when we talk about school safety. I think there's a balancing act that we have to do. So there's a lot of neat stuff that we got to talk about. Rhode Island's still a great place to live. I still believe America's the #1 country to live in, but we can nudge it in a different direction, and that's what I hope to do.
All right, Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure we're going to speak again as this election year goes on.
Thank you, Tyler.
No problem. Well, you heard that from Bill Gilbert, the chairman and gubernatorial candidate of Rhode Island's Moderate Party. We've got more to come. We've got one more segment left. You're listening to Tyler Salk right here on Rhode Island's independent home of the Renegade Radio, 990 WBOB.com.